Good to see a few of you have already joined. So please pop in the comments to say hi to me. And then I'm going to check it on my phone to see who is joining me. And I can say hello to you. Hang on a minute, my camera's a bit bouncy. So let me just stabilize that a bit. Looking forward to catching up with you guys, finding out about how you're getting on with communicating with your pets. And if I can give you some ideas of how to make things a lot easier, give you more creative ways of communicating with your pet, because this is something that I'm going to be saying a lot, that it is not harder to communicate with our own pets, but it is different. It is different to when we communicate with other people's pets. So I'm just waiting for the comments to come through. It takes a little bit of time to click in, but love to see who's here with me. Pop your name. And actually, while we're waiting, I want to be doing some kind of real-time suggestions for you, so that if there are questions that you've been asking your pet and you're thinking, I don't know if they really understand what I'm saying, I don't know if, they know how to answer me. If you pop those questions in the comments, I'm going to take a look at them, and I'm going to maybe give you some suggestions on, maybe asking it a different way. Okay, so it's your opportunity in this Facebook Live to send me some of your questions, and I'll see some different ways that you can ask your pets questions to allow your pets to be able to understand them. And as a result of them being able to understand it, it's more likely they will answer you. Otherwise, you're going to be thinking, they're not answering me. So either I'm not doing it right. So you start to doubt yourself. I'm not doing it right. They don't, I don't know how to do it. And you give up. And I don't want you to give up. That's why I do all these Facebook Lives and I do my posts, because I want to always be championing you. I don't want you to think that you can't do it, because often you can do it. You sometimes just need to tweak it. Okay. So I learned a lot from my own animals. In the end, that it wasn't that I couldn't do it, or, that I wasn't communicating with them, or that they weren't communicating with me. It's just that sometimes my answers don't really mean anything to them. Or anyway, we'll talk about all of that when we come to it. So I can see quite a few of you have joined, which is brilliant. So let me say hello to a few of you. Hi, Piedad. Hi, Kathita. Oh, nice to see you again. I recognize your name. Oh, hi, Lil. I love your videos. I love your posts. They are just so dramatic and they evoke such amazing emotions in me when I see them. So hi, Luz. Hi, Gita. Thank you for joining. Right. I'm going to go straight into it. So remember to pop your questions in the comment box. So questions that you often ask your animals, or that you're thinking about asking your pets, can be anything. And I want to maybe offer you a couple of suggestions of different ways of asking it. And then you can start to see where I'm coming from when I say, these are the ways to kind of ask them. Right. So let me go straight into it. I like to use slides so that it gives you value with some of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you. And it helps me to kind of keep on track what it is that I want to share with you. Right. Let's get going, because I want to honor your time. So does this describe where you're at? Do you often get nothing back from your pet when you ask them a question? Do you wonder if you're doing it right? Do you almost immediately assume that if you don't get a response, that you're doing it wrong? So when you're using animal communication, are you supposed to ask the questions out loud or in your mind? That's a perfectly reasonable question to wonder about. Sometimes we hear some people say that they ask it out loud. Some people say they do it in their mind. So when using animal communication, Are you supposed to ask the questions out loud or in your mind? Do their answers come through as another voice or accent, or as if they are your own thoughts? So again, you might have heard that some people, they say, oh yes, it's quite cartoon-like, you know, the character that comes through, they have a different voice or they have a different accent. And some people are like, well, I don't know, I don't hear those different voices. And it's just as if I thought those are my own thoughts. So how can you tell if it's a communication from your pet? So the solution often lies in the way you phrase your questions and the way you communicate them to your pet. We often make the assumption that our pets will just understand what we mean when we say something to them. We've got so used to just verbally instructing them, guiding them, telling them, you know, just asking them questions in passing. And sometimes it looks as if they get what we mean and their behavior, you know, will change and give us the evidence that they've understood us. And other times it looks as if they just, yeah, they obviously heard you, but they're not acting on it. So it can make you wonder. So what I found working with my own animals is that actually the way that I phrase the questions, it's important for me to see it, you know, to understand whether, does it make sense to them? So let's just do a recap. Always really important to understand that the intuitive senses is literally the vocabulary of the communication, the language that animals and our pets use. So visual, sound, smell, taste, emotion, sensation, and knowing. It's the ABC of animal communication. It's the basis and the foundation of animal communication, of the language that animals, the species to species. It's also our language. It's important to kind of, you know, remember that. We forget that actually these intuitive senses are actually our language. It's just that we as humans have found really another language, which is the words. And so we've become very dependent on that. But us as species use intuitive senses. So actually when we communicate with our pets, it's species to species. So do you know which is or which are your strong intuitive senses? I love to know. Please pop it in the comments so that again, I get a sense of, as a collective, as a crowd, as we gather in the Facebook Live together, how many of you have strong intuitive senses when it comes to visual, when it comes to sound, smell, taste, emotion, sensation, knowing? In fact, another question to ask is, do you know? Do you know which are your strong intuitive senses? When was the last time you connected with them? And do you also practice the fact that you can develop some of the ones that are not as strong? Or did you not even think about it? You just think, well, I get a lot of visuals and that's it. Or some of you are saying, oh, I'm an incredibly strong empath and that's how I communicate with animals. But again, what I like to do is to make sure that you develop all of the senses so that you're not missing out. So let me see. So we've got a couple of questions that are just coming through. Rachel, you say, I feel like it's me that is asking the question and giving the answer. Yeah, so almost like you ask the question, but then you're answering it yourself. So you're wondering whether you're having a conversation with your pet or not. Lil, you're saying, I often get the answers to my questions with delay when they are ready and learn to distinct the answers from my random thoughts. Okay, so you don't often get an immediate answer. So you ask the question and then you just let it hang. You just let it be. And then you create almost like a sense of awareness that when the answers come, you kind of catch it, that you are there for the questions. Okay, so Luz, you're saying sensations is your strong intuitive sense. Rachel, you have knowingness, emotion, smell, and visuals. That's really good. So you got, 4 there. So you want to see if there are ways that you can develop your intuitive sense of sound with sensation. Okay, so let me suggest a few things that can help you with developing your intuitive sense of sound. So sound can be words, can be lyrics, can be music, to activate, to almost like say to yourself, what is it like to receive an intuitive sound, or when an animal sends me a sound, is to use your imagination to begin with. So if I say something to you like, right, I want you to imagine that you can hear, say the birds singing, and the birds singing loudly, the dawn chorus. So just for a moment, just go, can I imagine and bring it to my awareness so that this sound of the birds singing is so loud that I can literally hear it in my imagination. So that's like the first step to kind of waking up your intuitive sense of sound, okay? And the same thing with sensation is allowing yourself to say, okay, imagine myself, somewhere really cold, like it's just I'm in the middle of a frozen lake, and it's so cold, and you just allow your imagination to really bring on all the sensations that are associated with being so cold, and being very dramatic about it. Because what you're doing is you're waking up that sensation using your imagination, and then that will really help you to open up the channels for intuitive sound and intuitive sensations to come into your experience. Okay. So Katita, you're saying knowing and sound. Okay. So we've got a few there. Right. So it's good that you can identify, which ones are your strong intuitive sense. So if you're not sure, it means that you are disconnected from your imagination. Okay. Now, lots of reasons why we can be disconnected with our imagination. Maybe we feel like life is a really, really tough right now. You could be in survival mode. Life happens, and it's not to, be too hard on yourself. Maybe you've not had time to really connect with nature, or, be at peace, or just relax. So if you find that you are not sure about your intuitive senses, you could be going through a phase. It's not all the time. We go through phases where we can feel disconnected from our intuitive senses, and then we can connect back in as well. Okay. Belinda, hi Belinda. So sound and emotions for you. Pam, hey Pam, good to see you. Visuals and images, taste and knowing. Okay. Sarah, you've got visual, sometimes emotions, sometimes knowing. Okay. Where you've said sometimes, that will be to do with, again, allowing time, okay, to really experience it. Emotions can take a little more time to come through as opposed to a visual. We tend to find that with visuals, they can come really fast. Sometimes you feel as if, oh, if I, kind of didn't pay attention, it's like come and gone. But emotions, sensations, a knowingness can take a bit of time to almost like bed in. So you got to give it a little bit of time. Right, let me move on. So thank you for your comments so far. Really helps me to keep in touch with you guys. All right, and I shall catch up on the. I've just seen your comments, Chance. PS squirrel cage brain. Wow. I've not heard of that expression before. Learned something new. And Kim, sound, vision, knowing. And Lil, yours is emotion and knowing. I'm glad that quite a few of you have mentioned about knowingness, because I want to talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about knowingness. What do you know about knowingness? What is your experience when you receive knowingness? Is it something that you immediately trust? Is it an experience whereby you might question it? Does it feel like it's exactly your own thoughts, your own ideas? It could be something that you said, say something like, I already know. Does any of that relate to you? So do you feel comfortable about having knowingness? So for me, I experience knowingness often as if I get hits of information that comes through. It's almost factual in nature. It's like, it can be almost like black and white. And most likely you will think it's your own thoughts. You may not understand the full meaning, but the message is clear. It's like there's no shifting it. It's like somebody's just sent you a word or sent you a piece of information. It almost like lands on your lap and then that's it. As if there's no more information sometimes to follow it. So is that your experience? Is it similar to mine or something different? I've always been fascinated with knowingness. Lil says, it feels like my own ideas. It needs practice to distinct if it's mine or theirs. Okay, let's wait to see if anybody else have their own experience of knowingness. Any of you here don't get knowingness? So I would be interested to know that as well. Okay, so let me tell you about what I believe knowingness is. The intuitive sense of knowingness is a package that to me contains the 6 sensory signs. So although it's identified as a intuitive sense, I personally have found that it's actually knowingness has it's like, yeah, it encompasses the other 6 intuitive sense: the visual, the sound, the smell, the taste, the physical sensation, and the emotion. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So I want you to follow along the concept that knowingness is like a package that I've handed to you, okay? But actually, within this package, you have the 6 intuitive senses. But when you don't realize it's a package, you just experience it as a knowing, and therefore it doesn't feel as if that's lots of information related to it, but actually the information is inside the package and you haven't unpacked it. So let's go into that a little bit more. To me, knowingness is actually the beginning, rather than you got a piece of information and that's it. To me, it's actually like the start of, it's a topic to be discussed, because often what happens is that we get a piece of information that comes through as knowingness, and it can take us almost like you can be taken aback by it because it just comes in and then you go, oh, and then you might actually start to question it, especially if the knowingness is a piece of information that you start to maybe think, oh gosh, how can I say this? Because that could upset somebody. Or how can I say that? It feels so, almost like, say, if a cat says, that's it, my decision is made, I don't want to be on this earth anymore. That's like a knowingness. And so you're thinking, gosh, is that real? I mean, I know it's a knowingness, but how can I be sure? So what can happen is that almost immediately after receiving knowingness, you can actually stop in your tracks, and then you don't know what to do with it. Then you feel as if it's really risky, to take it forward. Let me take some examples here. Rachel says, it's something that pops up that I just know. Okay. Bogita, you're saying often just words, like you describe it. Okay, so you same as me. Leona, you're saying I use knowingness to check all the other pieces of information I receive. Okay, that's great. So to me, what I want you to do, let me go back one, is that when you get, so Rachel, I'm going to use your example. When you say, I get something that pops up that I just know, to be even more confident with your knowingness, I want you to say to yourself, okay, that piece of information that I got, what was the visual that I got from it? What was the sound? What was the smell? What was the taste? What was the physical sensation? What was the emotion? Because knowingness is in an intuitive sense that works incredibly quickly because it does tap into our knowledge. But in order to be really confident that you did receive, but not just receive, but that you translated it and interpreted it the correct way, as in correct in how you understood it to be, you can unpack the knowingness and say, just as I got that knowingness, was there a visual? Just as I got that knowingness, was there a sound? Same with smell, taste, physical sensation, emotion. Of course, you may not get all 6, but you may find that there was a physical sensation associated with the knowingness. But because the knowingness came in so quickly, it kind of like left a physical sensation kind of trailing behind, and you haven't connected to the intuitive senses. So I hope that that's actually useful for you. It could be something that you might find that you want to explore about this concept of what I'm talking about. Because often with knowingness, it's like you have to almost say, okay, I know it came through and I trust myself. And then that's your knowingness. But I also feel that it's good to be able to connect in with the knowingness, especially if you are relaying the information to somebody else. So somebody says, how do you know? And then you just go, I just know. It's true for you, but you want to help the person to feel confident with the information, especially if it's sensitive information. So you want to be able to say, well, when I got the knowingness, I also had the visual of, the sound of, the smell of, the taste, the physical sensation of, the emotion of, okay? And if you get it in words, if your knowingness is in words, think about it. A word has visual, a word has smell, taste, sound, particularly emotion. Yeah, a word doesn't exist without anything. A word holds so much of all the information. So it's like your knowingness is like a word, but if you unpack the word, you'll have your intuitive senses. And then you can be super, super confident when you get knowingness and somebody says, how do you know? You want to be able to go, I tell you how I know, not just, I just know, because to me, that's kind of not enough. Different when you're connecting in with your own pets, because you don't have to explain it to anybody else. Yeah. But if you're not sure, is it my own thoughts? Is it my pets? You want to be able to unpack the intuitive sense of knowingness. Okay. I'm glad it resonates, Rachel, and also Lil. That's brilliant. Okay. So now let's go into phrasing questions, asking our pets better questions. So I want you to use the intuitive senses. I'm never far from any of my work and teaching to remind us to continue to focus on the fact that animal communication literally is to do with the intuitive senses. So let's just use an example of a question that we generally do ask a lot with our pets. We say something like, is there anything you need? How many of you do ask your pets those questions? That question, is there anything you need? Okay, so now in order to know whether this question will be something that your pet can understand, right? I want you to be able to say to me, what visual are you sending your pet when you say, is there anything you need? What sound are you sending? What smell? What taste? What emotion? What sensation? Now, you don't have to have all of those 6 senses there, but say, for example, you say, yeah, is there anything you need? What visual are you actually sending your pet? What, for example, emotion are you sending your pet? When you do it this way, therefore, is your question clear for your pet to understand? So I'm just going to give you a moment to share with me. What would you be sending as a visual or a sound or a smell or a taste or emotional sensation when you ask your pet, is there anything you need? Or are you now finding that, I don't know, how would my pet understand this question with regards to if I was going to send it to them in their language? Perhaps it's more likely that the emotion you could send, but even then, how clear is that emotion behind that question? Is it starting to make you think about how your pet can actually, understand this question? So I'm going to try another one. Okay. So Rachel, you say, I don't know. So therefore, that could be what your pet's saying. So another common question we ask our pet a lot is, are you okay? How many of you here ask your pet that question? Are you okay? You all right? So again, what visual can you communicate to your pet? What sound, what smell, what taste, what emotion, what sensation when you're asking, are you okay? Right? Are you getting kind of where seeing where I'm getting at here? Because we ask these questions, making the assumption that our pets understand what we are asking them. But when you look at it from the perspective of the animal language, which is the intuitive sense, it doesn't come across so clear, does it? Yeah? Here's another one. This is something that I still fall into this habit with my own pets. I'll say, tell me what's wrong. Tell me what's going on. Tell me why you're doing that. So when we are asking it so that our pets can understand it in their language, what visual are we sending? What sound, what smell, what taste, what emotion, what sensation? Are you beginning to see what I'm getting at here? Is that although it's clear to us what we mean, because we are so used to, when we are speaking our own human language, our animals who haven't learned all of our kind of vocabulary, they connect in with certain words, primarily depending on how clear we are with our intuitive senses with us. But there are a lot of questions we do ask them that doesn't come across so clear to them. So if you have found that you asked the question, are you okay? Tell me what's wrong. What's the other question? Is there anything you need? And you don't get an answer, then the good news is not because they're not answering you. Yeah, so it's not because they don't want to answer us. It's just that when they're trying to really get the information from us from just those questions, it's not clear to them. All right. So, I got another one that I used to often ask my pets a lot. Why are you doing that? So again, now when I try to ensure that the question is clear for them by sending this question using the intuitive senses, I'm actually finding it like, I'm not quite sure. I might be able to do it visually because I would be able to send them a visual of what they're doing. Yeah. But other than that, it's quite a confusing question for my pets. And it might, likely to be for yours as well. So what can we do about it? My solution and my suggestion is that the more specific you are, the more likely your pet can answer the question. Okay. So what do I mean by that? I mean, be specific with what you really mean. And then when you then send it in the language that they can understand, is a lot clearer. Often we've become, let's say, lazy with the way we communicate. We just expect them to understand something that's general, so to help them to answer the question, the more specific you are, the more likely they'll answer it because they'll understand it fully. For example, instead of saying what's wrong, you can actually be more specific using the intuitive senses. You can say or ask, what are the sensations you are experiencing right now? Because then your pet can share with you and communicate with you the sensations. So if they're feeling upset or they're feeling scared or they're feeling, that there's weakness in their physical body, or that they are, just confused, they can send these sensations to you. What are the emotions that you're experiencing right now? So can you see how what's wrong when you're using intuitive senses, it's harder to send the correct information over to our pets. But when you're saying it like, what are the sensations you're experiencing right now? When I'm seeing how you've ran away from me when I call you, what are the sensations you're experiencing? When there's a knock on the door and I see that you are just, furiously attacking the door, what are the emotions you are experiencing right now? As opposed to when I call you and you run away, what's wrong? When someone knocks on the door and you're attacking the door furiously, what's wrong? Yes, it's harder for them to answer what's wrong and easier for them to answer what are the sensations, what are the emotions. Is this helping so far? Do any of you already ask questions more specifically than the general ones? So let's have a few more examples. Why are you doing that? So instead of asking them, why are you doing that? Say, what are you experiencing when you do that? So you can take, for example, if you see that, your cat is hiding under the sofa, instead of saying, why are you doing that? Why are you hiding from me? What are you experiencing when you're hiding under the sofa? Okay. Or to be even more specific, say to your pet, share with me the emotion, the smell, the taste for when you do that. So this is useful. I mean, it's quite fun. Say the dog likes to dig your flower bed and you're like cross with them and you're like, why are you doing that? Why are you digging up my flower bed? And then you don't get an answer. But when you go, what's the emotion that you're experiencing when you're digging up my flower bed? What are you smelling? What are you tasting when you do that? Then they'll be able to share it with you easier. Okay, then you'll get a measure of almost like where they're at. It's like, wow, okay, the emotion that they're feeling, oh my goodness, the adrenaline that's just coursing through their body when they're digging. Okay, that gives you the answer. All right. So is this helping so far? Please let me know in the comments. Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for your feedback. So this helps us to ask better questions because ultimately we want answers. And you know what? Our pets want to answer us. It's frustrating for them when they don't understand. It's frustrating for them when they get almost like a whole mixture of unclear, intuitive senses coming from us when we ask a question. So always remember that they want to answer us because nothing almost like damages our confidence when we think they don't want to answer, or when we think, oh, they're just stubborn, or you go the other way, like, oh, I just can't do this. I'm just rubbish at this. And other communicators seems to do it better than me. So it's not because anybody's doing it any better than you. It's just if they're much more specific, then you have a better chance. Okay. So here's the question for you to ask yourself. What do you want to achieve when you're asking your pet's question? Is it to get accuracy? Is it to get some kind of validation? Is it to get approval? So is it because you want to get something right with them? Is it because you're trying to validate what you're doing? Are you trying to get approval, maybe, to say you're doing it right? Or actually, are you phrasing your questions in such a way that it has a positive impact on your pet, that it allows a transformation, that it gives value to the conversation? Is the question interesting to your pet? Is the question something that your pet will feel comfortable and at ease, to talk about? So to me, that's the value, or is it more to do with the fact that you want to know whether you're doing it right? So there's an element of testing your animal a bit, which is the accuracy or the validation. Now, neither of that is right or wrong. You can say to yourself, actually, I do want to ask a question just to see if I'm accurate, but then your question will be phrased differently to if you want to ask your pet a question that creates a transformation with them. So for me, I really work on how can I ask my pet's question that really brings some value, to the conversation, that it actually brings about a transformation where it will help me to understand their perspective. So it requires a little bit of time to think through how you're asking the question, because then the success of getting an answer is going to be richly rewarding. Rather than ask these questions that you haven't thought about, like how that would be for your pet, and getting no answer back, or getting something back that's not relevant, and then you lose your confidence. You could even lose your patience. And then, or you might even make the assumption, no, my pet doesn't want to talk to me. It's so much harder talking to them. And then we make all these kind of, beliefs, I guess. We start to believe that you can't communicate with your pet, which I don't want you to do. So I am now going to check in on your comments to see how you have found my thoughts on asking better questions with your pet. So any comments? Now, did any of you put any questions in that you might want me to take a look at and then see if there's a different way of asking it? So Charlotte, your question is, do you find it's harder to communicate with your own animals rather than someone else's, as you are so close to them? So Charlotte, I have a question back for you, right? Where have you found this belief? Who have you heard from that have said to you it's harder to communicate with your own animals? Or have you worked on communicating with your animals as much as you have been working on communicating with other people's animals? Is a great question to ask yourself. Who have you heard from that have told you it's harder to communicate with animals? Who have you heard it from that might have said that because you're so close to them, it's harder to communicate with you? Or did you actually prove this? Okay, because to me, it's like almost everywhere that the belief is when you're so close to your pets, it's harder to communicate with them. And I believed it for many, many years. And then one day I thought, this is ridiculous. I want to communicate with them. This is why I got interested in animal communication. They got me interested in communication. It's because of them. I was having struggles with them that I then found animal communication helped me with them. So the day I said to myself, okay, maybe some people do find it difficult to communicate with their own pets, but who did they learn that from? So I want you to just check in. Who did you learn it from? Or did you actually found that when you gave equal amount of time spent learning to communicate with other people's animals, an equal amount of time learning to communicate with your own? Is that your own conclusion? Okay. So my answer is no, it's not harder, because I've, done my own research. It's different, particularly with questions, and also the settings different. All right. So I want you to look at the fact that it's different and take the word harder out. So Bagita, you say, when I get more specific, I like to ask, how are your intestines or how are your kidneys? But will my dog know? Okay, you can be specific with that, but then now what you have to bring into is, what do you expect your animals to know about their organs? Okay, so I would even be more specific. When you say, how are your intestines? Do the same thing. Visual, sound, smell, taste, emotions, sensations, what are you actually asking? Are you saying, kind of digging into my, basic anatomy? Are you asking, what are you actually asking when you say, how are your intestines, right? So you could be saying, are your intestines, I don't know, that's actually, you can't even use that word. Good one though. How is your food being digested in your intestine? So number one, you need to know the function of intestines, which I know you know, Bagita. So to me, intestines is the digestion of food. It has all processing, assimilation. Here's the word. So you might want to be more specific. So imagine the animal. How are they connected to their intestines? How are you connected to your intestines? Do you get cramps? How's your bowel movements? Yeah, you have to be that specific when you say, how's your intestine? So basically, how is your intestines functioning? So what's the function of the intestines? What do you want to know? Yeah. How are your kidneys? So again, what's the function of kidneys? Toxins, yeah, detoxify, urinary system. So you want to say to your, to your dog, how are you experiencing hydration, for example, because it's all linked. So it's quite a complicated general question when you say, how are your intestines, how are your kidneys? But does that give you more of an indication, Bagita? And just for others who are wondering how come this question comes from Bagita, is because Bagita is a holistic vet. So she will know about the anatomy of, of animals. So not everyone's going to be asking this question, how's your intestines, how's your kidneys, etc., how's your heart? So you need to know the function, and then you want to phrase it in such a way that your dog can answer you about how are they experiencing their body. So when you know the intestines isn't working right, or the kidneys aren't working right, what would be the symptoms that the dog would be experiencing? So you would phrase your questions more about the symptoms, and then the dog will be able to, give you more, kind of a more adequate answer. Right. So Pam, you're saying, I have learned that you need to ask very specific questions. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be all the time, but it's just when we are asking questions that are, let's call it human driven. Yeah. Even the question that we love saying is like, do you have any messages for us? We kind of know that they understand what that means, but I'd love you to make it more specific, is to give almost like the emotion behind it. Like, I would love a wisdom message from you. So I would say, in relation to, yeah, have you got any messages for me in relation to what's going on with me and my work? Or do you have any wisdom message for me with regards to my life purpose? So can you see, by making that a little bit more specific, it allows our animals to go, I know what she's asking. Okay. So Charlotte says, Good questions, a mix of all, I think. My own logic and confidence in the answer getting in the way. Also, what I've heard people say, and because of both of those things, I haven't tried as much, which is a shame. And I want to encourage you, Charlotte. Trust yourself to just say to yourself, when you're working with your own pets, do you know what the best part about learning animal communication with your pet is? You don't have the fear of getting it wrong. That has been my liberation when I started to work with my own pets more, was that I just didn't fear getting it wrong. I knew that they will show me in their behavior or just the way that we interact, and then everything I learned with them, I just naturally transferred it into other people's animals, because if I'm getting the kind of feedback that I'm getting from my animals, and it's real and it's happening, then I'm no different when I'm communicating with other people's animals. So they actually help me with my confidence so much more. Okay. So Veronica, you're saying it's helpful. Saffron, you're saying it's helpful. That's absolutely brilliant. So thank you for, oh, hang on, I got one more from Bagita. Will she know the same as I do? Not necessarily, because you would have studied it. You would have got the knowledge and the information. So you need to ask the questions in such a way that you put the jigsaw pieces together. Does that help? Okay. So this can come from a belief sometimes that animals know everything. Like we talk about their higher self and their higher consciousness. You can, but then that's almost like a kind of a different conversation to have. If you actually want to know specifically about their physical body or their physical organ, you want to be able to. It's almost no different to a say going to the doctors, or to you as a vet, and the owner is describing the symptoms, and then you kind of draw your own conclusions. So you want to help your dogs to be able to answer questions that can allow you to put all the pieces together. And then ultimately, with that kind of knowledge, it has to come from you, because it's a diagnosis you're after. Animals, in my opinion, don't diagnose. Yeah, they don't have medical terminology because it's human created. So, okay. Right, well, I think that's all there are in terms of the questions. Thank you so much for joining me. We've got a really lovely crowd today, so I really appreciate that. If you're catching this on replay, do #replay. If you think that this is going to be useful for somebody that you know, then tag them in this Facebook Live, or share it, to their message, to their messenger, or on your timeline. So thank you so much for joining me, and let me know how you get on with asking better questions to your pet. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.